The defining event of your financial nightmare will not be a stock market crash or a slow inflationary bleed, but the terrifyingly silent Sunday evening when you log into your banking app and see the words "service unavailable" followed by a generic email citing technical difficulties or temporary maintenance, which is the bureaucratic euphemism for a systemic liquidity freeze. You must understand that the money you see on your screen does not exist. It is a digital hallucination, a row of pixels representing an unsecured loan you have foolishly made to a highly leveraged hedge fund disguised as a commercial bank. When you deposit your hard-earned capital into a bank, you legally cease to be the owner of that money. The title transfers to the bank and you become an unsecured creditor, meaning that in the event of an insolvency, you are last in line to be repaid, standing behind the bondholders, the secured creditors, and the derivatives counterparties. The soft men operate under the FDIC delusion, believing that a government agency with a reserve ratio of less than 1.5% can magically ensure a multi-trillion-dollar banking system that is hyper-connected and leveraged to the hilt. The architect looks at the math and sees the truth. The insurance fund is designed to handle the failure of a few small regional banks in a booming economy, not a systemic contagion event where 5 major institutions collapse simultaneously. In a total meltdown, the FDIC is mathematically insolvent within hours, and the government will simply change the rules because they cannot print enough money to cover the derivatives exposure without instantly hyperinflating the currency to zero. You are trusting a paper shield to stop a nuclear blast. You must internalize the Cypriot template because it is the playbook for the next global crisis. In 2013, in Cyprus, the banks did not wait for a bailout. They executed a bail-in. They closed the doors on a Friday, locked the ATMs, and over the weekend, they simply confiscated a percentage of their depositors' funds to recapitalize the bank. This was not theft. It was legal code. Since then, the G20 nations, including the US via Dodd-Frank Title II, and the EU have quietly passed legislation allowing for bail-ins. This means that when the next Lehman moment arrives, the taxpayers will not be asked to foot the bill because the political will for bailouts is dead. Instead, the depositors will be the ones sacrificed. Your savings will be forcibly converted into bank equity, worthless stock in the failing institution. You will go to sleep with $100,000 in cash and wake up with $50,000 in cash and $50,000 in bank shares that are trading at zero. The soft man thinks this is impossible in America or Europe. He thinks it can't happen here. The architect knows that "it can't happen here" is the famous last words of every victim in history. The laws are already on the books. The mechanism is primed. The only thing missing is the trigger event. The system is designed to protect the system, not the participants. When the choice is between the collapse of the sovereign debt market or the confiscation of middle-class savings, they will choose confiscation every single time without blinking. The danger is amplified by the velocity of panic in the digital age. In the 1930s, a bank run was a slow physical process. Men had to stand in line, giving the bank days to find liquidity. In 2026, a bank run happens at the speed of light. As we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, a rumor on Twitter, X, can drain $42 billion from an institution in 10 hours. This means that by the time you hear about the crisis on the news, it is already over. The smart money, the insiders, the venture capitalists, the whales, moved their capital out days ago because they have better information than you. You are the bag holder. The soft men wait for the official announcement from the CEO or the president saying the banking system is sound, which is the universal signal that the collapse is imminent. The architect understands counterparty risk. Every dollar you leave in the custody of a third party is a dollar you do not own. You are relying on their competence, their honesty, and their solvency. In a fractional reserve system where banks lend out 90% or more of your deposits, they are technically insolvent at all times. They rely entirely on confidence. When confidence evaporates, the illusion shatters. If you cannot touch it, if you cannot physically hold it or cryptographically sign for it, you do not own it. You merely have a claim on it, and claims are easily denied during an emergency. The bank is not a vault. It is a casino where they gamble with your life savings, keep the profits, and socialize the losses. The gate is always open until the moment you try to leave, and then it slams shut with the weight of federal law. To survive the inevitable liquidity freeze, you must immediately undergo a radical operational shift from being a passive depositor to becoming your own central bank, a transition that requires you to physically and digitally take custody of your assets and sever the umbilical cord that ties your your survival to the competence of a corrupt financial intermediary. The architect understands that in a crisis of confidence, the only thing that matters is bearer assets, assets that you own outright, that have no counterparty liability, and that require no permission to access, sell, or transport. The soft men are heavily invested in paper assets, stocks, bonds, ETFs, and mutual funds, which they believe they own, but in reality, they merely hold a entitlement holder status within a complex custodial chain where the actual shares are registered in the name of CD and Company in the US or similar central depositories globally. In a systemic collapse where the broker-dealers fail, the SIPC insurance is just as insolvent as the FDIC, and your ownership of those Apple shares becomes a legal abstraction tied up in bankruptcy court for a decade, while the actual assets are liquidated to pay off the secured creditors of the brokerage. To protect yourself, you must exit this paper illusion and build a sovereign stack composed of assets that exist outside the digital ledger of the banking cartel. The foundation of this stack is physical gold and silver, the only form of money that has survived every government collapse, every hyperinflation, and every war for 5,000 years, because it is the only financial asset that is not simultaneously someone else's liability. The soft man buys a gold ETF like GLD or a paper gold certificate because it is convenient, failing to realize that these vehicles are often rehypothecated, meaning the same bar of gold has been sold to 10 different people on paper. When the music stops and everyone demands delivery, the paper market implodes, and only the man holding the physical coin in his hand possesses the wealth. You must acquire recognizable, low-premium bullion, sovereign coins like eagles, maples, or Britannias, and store them in a location that you control, or in a private non-bank vault in a jurisdiction legally distinct from your residency, like Singapore or Switzerland, to protect against domestic confiscation. Executive Order 6102 style. Silver serves a different purpose. In a total breakdown where digital payments fail, gold is too valuable for daily transactions. You cannot buy bread with a gold ounce, but silver coins become the de facto currency of the street. This is your grid-down insurance. It is heavy, it is inconvenient, and it yields no interest, which is exactly why it works. It is off the grid, it is silent, it is yours. The second pillar of the sovereign stack is self-custodied Bitcoin, which serves as your digital teleportation layer. The soft men leave their crypto on exchanges like Coinbase or Binance, which is functionally identical to leaving money in a bank. You do not own the coins. You own an IOU from a tech company that is gambling with your funds, as proven by the collapse of FTX. The architect uses a hardware wallet, cold storage, to generate his private keys offline, ensuring that his wealth exists purely as a mathematical truth on the blockchain, accessible only by him. This is the most powerful asymmetry in history. You can memorize a 12-word seed phrase, a brain wallet, and cross any border in the world naked, carrying $1 billion in your head, undetected by metal detectors, dogs, or customs agents. Once you cross the border, you can restore the wallet and access your capital instantly. This is unseizable wealth. Governments can seize your house, they can freeze your bank account, and they can confiscate your gold if they find it, but they cannot confiscate a number inside your mind. However, this power comes with absolute responsibility. There is no forgot password button. If you lose the keys, the money is gone forever. The architect accepts this burden because the alternative, trusting a third party, is suicide. Finally, you must maintain a fiat liquidity buffer in physical cash. In the initial stages of a banking crisis, credit card terminals will go offline, ATMs will run dry within hours, and digital transfers will be blocked. The world will revert to a cash-only economy for a period of 30 to 90 days. The soft man laughs at cash because inflation is eating it, but in a liquidity crunch, cash is king, not because of its store of value, but because of its option value. The man with $10,000 in small bills in a safe can buy food, fuel, and passage when the man with $10 million in a frozen bank account is starving. This is not investment advice. This is survival logistics. You are building a fortress with layers: cash for immediate chaos, silver for local trade, gold for generational wealth preservation, and Bitcoin for global mobility and asymmetrical growth. By diversifying not just across asset classes, but across counterparty risks, you ensure that no single point of failure, no bank CEO, no central banker, and no government decree can turn your net worth to zero. You have essentially seceded from the financial system while continuing to live within it. The soft men will call you paranoid until the day the doors close. Then they will call you lucky. The architect knows luck has nothing to do with it. It is simply the ruthless application of the rule. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. The final and most critical phase of the survival protocol is not financial, but tactical. It is the mastery of the gray man philosophy, the psychological and physical camouflage required to move through a collapsing society without becoming a target for the desperate, the envious, or the predatory. You must understand that when the banking doors slam shut and the middle class realizes their life savings have been vaporized, the social contract will not just bend, it will shatter. The soft men who spend their lives signaling their status through luxury cars, designer logos, and expensive zip codes will find themselves wearing a neon sign that says, "Rob me," in an environment where hunger has replaced civility. The architect understands that in a crisis, visibility is vulnerability. Your goal is to be completely unremarkable, a shadow in the crowd, possessing immense wealth in gold and Bitcoin, while appearing as a person with nothing worth stealing. You must immediately kill your ego's desire for recognition. The sovereign lord thrives in the shadows. The peasant brags about what he doesn't have. In the initial stages of a collapse, the greatest threat is not the government, but the mob of the dispossessed. People who were comfortable on Friday will be desperate by Tuesday. They will look for someone to blame, and they will look for someone who has what they lack. You must implement a strict protocol of operational security, OPSEC. You do not tell your neighbors about your gold. You do not show off your food stores. You do not brag about your crypto gains. You maintain the illusion of struggle. If the neighbors are complaining about the price of eggs, you complain louder. If they are talking about their frozen bank accounts, you nod in somber agreement. You must blend into the collective misery to avoid being singled out as a hoarder or a profiteer. This is social camouflage. The architect knows that the most effective wall is the one people don't know exists. You must also prepare for the security vacuum that occurs when the police are overwhelmed or underpaid. This requires you to have the means to defend your perimeter, not just with firearms, but with intelligence and community. You must know who in your immediate vicinity is a threat and who is a potential ally, but you never reveal your full hand to anyone. Furthermore, you must conquer the panic virus. When the liquidity freeze happens, the masses will experience a collective nervous breakdown. They will flood the grocery stores, fight over gasoline, and engage in irrational herding. The architect has already done his shopping. He has his deep pantry of storable food, his water filtration, and his fuel reserves tucked away months in advance. Because you are prepared, you have the most valuable asset of all, time. While the soft men are out in the streets fighting for the last loaf of bread, exposing themselves to violence and disease, you are sitting quietly behind your locked doors, observing the chaos through your cameras, waiting for the first wave of madness to subside. You do not participate in the frenzy. You do not wait in lines. You do not engage with the authorities unless absolutely necessary. You become a ghost in the machine. This level of detachment requires a warrior's stoicism. You must be able to watch the world burn on your screen and feel nothing but a cold, analytical resolve to protect your bloodline. The final transition is from citizen to survivor. A citizen relies on the system for protection, food, and identity. A survivor relies on himself and his close network. You must have a bug-out plan, a secondary location, a rural farm, a foreign residency, or a boat, and a go bag with the essentials: your seed phrase, your silver coins, your water filters, and your defense tools. If your primary location becomes a kill zone due to civil unrest or government overreach, you must have the mobility of the architect to leave within 30 minutes and never look back. The soft men will stay and defend their castle even when the castle is a burning apartment building in a riot-torn city, because they are emotionally attached to their furniture. The architect has no such attachments. He knows that his wealth is in his head and his cold storage. Everything else is replaceable. You are the asset. Your family is the mission. The territory is just a variable. By mastering the psychology of the gray man, you ensure that when the great leveling comes, you are the one who emerges from the smoke with your capital, your dignity, and your life intact. The sheep will be slaughtered. The wolves will fight each other. The architect will simply vanish until it is safe to rebuild the world in his image.